You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Evan Brand, it's Dr. J. It's a Monday. How we doing?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Hey, it's good that you survived the weekend.
Yeah, it was a extremely exciting weekend with the baby. Getting a lot of trouble with the baby.
Nice. What'd you guys do?
Just hang out at the park, hang out outside.
Nice. That's awesome.
You get stopped by a lot of people when you have a baby.
Oh, I know. I just got a dog a month or two ago, and I never realized how many people are dog lovers, but man, we get so much attention when we have our dog. It's
yeah,
crazy.
If you were single, that would be the easiest way.
I told my wife that. I said if something ever happened where I could go back in time, if I were to do it all over again, I would have got a dog, right off the bat, just a really cute small dog. But it's all good. I'm happy where I'm at.
Yep, cool.
But I wanted to say that we were talking pre-show there that I got a crown today, and I go see a holistic dentist in Austin. Her name's Dr. Joan Sefcik. I'm going to actually have her on the podcast real soon. We're going to talk about root canals, cavities, crowns, all those things. But I had an issue with my tooth where I needed a crown. About 16 years ago, I split my tooth in half when I was really young, just eating a whole bunch of sugar, eating a whole bunch of gluten. Hadn't really got the message back then about health. Split my tooth, but I was actually able to keep it together with some cement and obviously change my diet and never had anything like that happen with my tooth again. But I had the long-term consequence of that tooth being unstable. So we put a crown on it, and we actually did some testing too to figure out what the best material was. And we actually, I think we ended on a cubic zirconia. So right now I have an acrylic crown that's a temporary one, and we got a cubic zirconia one coming in. We had it muscle tested, and we called the lab. We chose the top 3 materials that test the best based on blood chemistry, and then we muscle tested the top 3. And I tested great for all of them, which was great. And then the doc said, well, this is the one I have the best success with, and because you tested great with all 3, we're going to go with this one. So
I'm sure people want to know, with holistic dentistry, that's all cash, no insurance for that?
A little bit. I mean, we have some dental, but I paid that, I think, out of pocket. I think it ended up costing me like $1,000 for the crown, and if I didn't have insurance, it would have cost me $1,500, something like that.
So insurance kind of works for holistic dentistry.
A little bit. I mean, the thing is, what's holistic is the material we're using, right? We're not using the standard base crap. I think it's nickel a lot of times, which can screw up with the conduction of nerves in the body. So that's the big thing. And also, she used a lot of ozone. So as she'd go in there, she'd use ozone and get in there, like a lot of essential oils. So it was really targeted to kill a lot of the bacteria and crap that could be in there, even though I actually asked her, she said it was great, which is good. It's a testament to, good, clean eating. So we're going to have her on the show real soon to talk more about healthy teeth and oral hygiene. So that'll be fun.
Awesome.
So I'm doing pretty good. Not bad. I get to go get my cubic zirconia tooth. My wife was texting me. He's like, is that going to look like one of those fake diamonds in your mouth? No, I don't think so. I asked. It's going to look, cosmetically in sync with my other teeth. So it'll be all right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we talked about doing something on ketosis. I've had Jimmy Moore on the podcast. I've spoken on the Live in La Vida Low Carb Cruise. We did a podcast a few months ago on Ketoos, which is a synthetic ketone supplement. and I look forward to digging in a little bit more on ketosis.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits. Ketosis, in my opinion, is not for everyone at every point of their life. It has a lot of incredible benefits for weight loss, but if you have adrenal issues, in my experience, some people feel worse. Maybe there is that adjustment period, but I find if people are they're afraid of carbs, they can tank out even more. What's your experience with adrenal issues and ketosis?
So I think ketosis is phenomenal for most people that are out there, especially if you're dealing with metabolic syndrome, meaning there's a level of insulin resistance and your body is having a difficult time tapping into fat for fuel. Ketosis is phenomenal because what you're doing is, imagine fat is like this big branch, and we're trying to throw that branch into the wood chipper, and then out of that wood chipper comes these things called ketones. And these ketones can be used by different tissue in the body. And the thing is, glucose actually burns dirty, right? It's like a diesel fuel. It smells, it's stinky if you ever drive behind a diesel car, at least the older ones. But ketones, they burn really clean. And when I say burn really clean, you don't get a lot of reactive oxygen species or free radicals afterwards. So it burns really clean like that. And also you don't get the effects of glycation, which is basically all the proteins or tissue in your body gets sugar-coated, and that creates basically a magnet for free radicals. So we like ketones because of the stability they give people, right? With sugar, we get this up and down reactive hypoglycemic effect with a lot of people that are doing refined sugar or just higher glycemic foods, meaning they get into your bloodstream really fast. We don't quite get that with ketones. So the big issue is most people have metabolic syndrome, big waist, high blood pressure, lots of inflammation, lots of insulin and blood sugar. They can't get the sugar into their cells and utilize it for fuel optimally. So they can't. Their cells are very resistant. So they get reliant on sugar to burn, but two, their cells don't want to take it in a lot and actually burn it. So they get very tired, and a lot of that gets put in gets stored as fat. So it's a double-edged sword. They're tired. They don't want to exercise. They get cravings. They crave more sugar. And then when your insulin levels are high, it basically blocks fat from being burned. So you're primarily burning sugar, but you can't get a lot of it to the cell, so you're tired.
Right. I've heard recently, which I've read, I can't remember where I was reading, there's kind of a myth that's perpetuated where people are only a fat burner or only a sugar burner, and that's not the case. It seems that most people have the ability to do both, and if you wanted to survive in primal times, then you better have the ability to be able to burn glucose or ketones to survive. But I think the goal of that is you just want to be primarily a fat burner, not primarily a sugar burner, which is, what would you say, 90% of the population is probably primarily glucose driven?
Yeah, I would say at least 75%. And when we talk in generalities, right, we're talking like, hey, you're primarily burning sugar for fuel. We're primarily burning fat for fuel. That's the thing what we're kind of get across there. And most people, we talk about calorie partitioning. They're partitioning, right? Imagine you got a police officer and he's siphoning people through. Go that way, go that way. You got all these calories that are going through, and the police officer saying, hey, go this way into the fat cell, get stored as fat, and a small amount will actually get burned. So we're not shunting those calories. Hey, go to the mitochondria, get burned, create energy. While you're creating energy, you're building muscle because you're doing something that's creating resistance in the body, which builds muscle, whether it's the piezoelectric effect and you're building calcium into the bone, or whether you're putting muscle into the muscle belly. So we want to essentially use that, traffic police officer or that, flight tower attendant that's telling the planes which direction to go. We want to tell those calories, hey, go to the mitochondria, get burned versus get stored in the fat cell. And one of the biggest ways we can do that, especially with people that have this insulin resistant metabolic syndrome, is getting into ketones by cutting carbs.
Yep.
Typically down to 20 to 30 grams is a great starting point for most people. Go ahead.
Now, do people actually need to count? I mean, I'm probably in ketosis now at this point because I haven't had much today. I had a bison burger, and also I had some what did I have for breakfast? I had some kind of meat. And I can feel it. I know because you can feel your breath start to stink a little bit more. That's how you know. That's like the first sign of ketosis, or one of the first signs.
Well, yeah, you get the acetone, but I mean, if you're only at like 0.5 millimoles, I mean, that's not a ton. So maybe your breath gets a little bit fruity. That's the acetone. So there's three kinds of ketones. There's acetone, there's beta-hydroxybutyrate, and there's acetate. So like if you look at the breath meters are really measuring the acetone in the breath, and then the blood is measuring the beta-hydroxybutyrate in the blood.
Okay.
Right? And then some actually will measure the ketones in the urine. Not that efficient, because if you're burning ketones, well, that means if you're burning them, they may not end up in the urine, right? So if you get someone who's in ketosis, they're spitting out a whole bunch of ketones, but they're burning them up efficiently, they may not pee a lot out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So early on, you get a lot of people that are in ketosis, but their body's not efficient at burning those ketones. So those ketones go in the urine to start. But then later on, as they get more efficient, you won't see them in the urine. That's why I got my ketone meter right here. I use the Abbott Precision Extra or Precision Ultra. And I got blood sugar on there as well as ketone strips too.
Yeah, I've done the breath. It was by Ketonics. I've done their breath one. That one was pretty good. I find that I had like a low level of ketones all of the time. Let's clear something up though. When people hear about ketones, they've likely been in the grocery store, Walgreens or somewhere, and they've seen the raspberry ketones as a weight loss supplement. They became very popular over the last probably 5 years. First off, raspberry ketones, they're not even derived from raspberries when you see those. Most of the time when I've looked at the ingredients, a lot of times there's synthetic chemicals in there. There's artificial colors, sometimes artificial sweeteners in these raspberry ketones. So I do not recommend them. I don't actually know enough about what's actually in there to know what's actually going to happen. But generally, just looking at some of the ingredient list on ketones, it's garbage.
Yeah, raspberry ketones aren't necessarily ketones. I mean, if you look at what's in there, there are these phenolic compounds that aren't your typical beta-hydroxybutyrate, whether it's calcium or sodium beta-hydroxybutyrate salts. Like if you look at a lot of the ketone products, there's Ketoos, there's another one, a Ketosport, I think, and they're using the beta-hydroxybutyrate salts, calcium or sodium. Those are like the gold standard. Now, you can use precursors, right? Kind of like how we use maybe pregnenolone for adrenal support precursors. You can use precursors like medium chain triglycerides, which are going to be primarily C8 and C10. Like the brain ketones are more C8, right? Octanoic acid, or I think that's maybe caprylic. There's two names. I like the octanoic because it's more descriptive. The octagon, that's eight carbons. So typically we'll do ketones that are C8 and C10 because you get the brain effects of ketones, but you also get the metabolic effects. So like typically in the morning after I have either a good clean collagen shake or some eggs, and I do my butter coffee with high quality MCT oil, I'll get my ketones up within an hour or two to 0.5, 0.6 millimoles. And I feel great. That? I measure it, yeah. Now the thing is with the ketonics, it's more qualitative. So like that number, like let's say you're a different color or light on that variant. That light that you hit one day, you may hit it the next day, but your number may have been different if you were measuring it in millimoles of ketone. So it's a good indicator to say if you're in ketosis. It's not a good quantitative indicator of what exactly were you.
Yeah, the other brand that I've seen before, I'm trying to find the ingredients right now, is Ketogenics. So I'm trying to see what's in here. It's $200 for a 4-week supply.
Yeah, they're kind of expensive. My biggest thing off the bat is, number one, get your diet dialed in. So you talked about carbs. So the first thing is, as a macro percentage of nutrients, is you want to get your fat up. Most people screw up in ketosis because they go too high in protein. They're eating like, 30, 40% protein. It's hard to do that much in protein unless you do two things wrong. Number one, you eat lots of lean meat. And number two, you do excessive protein powders. So those are the two things. Now, you can get away going higher on protein if you're doing a lot of resistance training, all right? But if you're not doing a whole bunch of resistance training, you want your macros up around 60 to 70% fat is a pretty good starting point. So what I recommend is just throw your foods into a MyFitnessPal. And if you're using a paleo template, so that means you're going to be getting most of your meats from animal products. Your carbohydrates, you're going to choose obviously more from the non-starchy vegetable sources. A really easy thing is you'll typically be good around 20 to 30 grams and you can just throw in your carbohydrates, cup of broccoli, cup of spinach, cup of kale. Maybe you're doing some asparagus. Maybe you do another salad for dinner or lunch. Throw all the vegetables that you do in there. You'll probably find that you sit around 30 grams of carbohydrate once you factor out the fiber. 20 to 30 is pretty good unless you're doing a ton of juicing or a ton of veggies. You'll probably be around 20 to 30 net carbs. That's a pretty good place to be. So that's a good starting point. And then from there, depending on whether you want to stay in ketosis, I like to keep myself around 40 to 70 carbs a day, and I get my ketones up to 0.5, and I feel phenomenal.
So
you're around 0.5.
So you're basically in some level of ketosis most days.
Absolutely. And then, like, if you listen to guys like Jimmy Moore, Jimmy's around 1, maybe 1 to 2. And again, you don't have to worry about ketoacidosis until you get to about 20. Ketoacidosis is potentially what can happen to diabetics, type 1 primarily, and or alcoholics that have cirrhosis, that have messed up livers. Essentially, ketoacidosis is when your insulin levels are high and your blood sugar's high. Okay, that's typically hard to do because when insulin goes high, blood sugar goes low.
Yep.
All right. So insulin's high, blood sugar is high in the bloodstream, but what's happening is we can't get the calories or the blood sugar into the cell, so the cell's starving. And what happens is the body is trying to generate energy, so it spits out a whole bunch of ketones. Does that make sense?
So I was looking the ingredients here. Basically, what this is, it is the beta hydroxybutyric acid. That's literally what you're supplementing with. That, along with some medium chain triglycerides, and then leucine, lysine, and isoleucine. That's it. And then some erythritol, some stevia, some color, things like that. So that's it. So you're literally taking just this. You're taking ketones. That's what it is, right? The beta hydroxybutyric is just one type of ketone. Is that right?
Correct. Oh, I want to go back and correct myself. I misspoke. So regarding the ketoacidosis, it's the insulin is low. Insulin's low.
So you can't deal with the blood sugar.
Blood sugar is high, so you can't get it. Remember, insulin's the lock or the key that goes into the lock. The keyhole is the receptor site, whether it's a GLUT4 key, which is that's allowing sugar into the muscle, or whether it's on the liver and various different glutes. So imagine the glutes the lock and insulin's the key. So you can't use the key to get into the cell. So what happens is all the sugar accumulates in the bloodstream because insulin's low. So everything I said before was correct, except it's because of low insulin. Think, right? Type 1 diabetics have an issue with low levels of insulin because their islet cells in their pancreas, the beta cells, have been destroyed by autoimmune attack. So they can't get that sugar in there. So the body's freaking out. It's saying, where the heck am I going to get energy? So it starts ramping out a whole bunch of ketones. Ketones have an acidic ash to it, or an acidic foundation to it. So it shifts the pH because instead of being a nutritional ketosis at 0.5 millimoles or 1 or maybe 2, they're 20 to 10 times higher. And that shifts the pH down. When the pH goes down, they can go into a diabetic coma.
Wow. Yeah, you said that quickly. Otherwise, I probably would have caught that. That makes a lot more sense. So insulin's low, sugar's high. That's when you don't want to do it. And like this supplement says, that you cannot use it with type 1 diabetics for that reason. Exactly.
And I was listening to a lecture just yesterday talking on the topic, and he did the same thing I just did, and I got his bad habit from it. He said the exact thing I said the first time. So I got the bad habit by osmosis, but we corrected it here. So think low insulin, high sugar, the cells are starving. Yep. The body freaks out, and it tries to go and generate a whole bunch of ketones, but shifts the pH. So now, how do we use ketones beneficially? So we can use exogenous precursors like we mentioned, okay? Obviously, the diet's going to be foundational. Now, some people, there's a couple ways of doing it. You can live in ketosis. That can be great for some people. If you have cancer, a lot of great studies, especially over at Boston College. Dr. Veach, NIH guy, he went to school, or he studied under Dr. Hans Krebs. I mean, the guy invented the Krebs cycle, right? He discovered it, which is how the body generates, energy via NADH and FADH redox reactions, which then generate ATP in the Krebs cycle as well as the electron transport chain. But this is how our body generates energy, and this guy studied with this doctor that created or discovered this stuff. So moral of the story is this is another way the body can generate energy, and ketones are a really important part of the Krebs cycle, and they're a really important part of starving out cancer cells. So cancer is primary fuel. If you look at Otto Warburg or Otto van Warburg, a German scientist in the 30s and 40s, got 2 Nobel Prizes actually, discovering this physiology around cancer cell metabolism. And he found that cancer cells primarily survive on glucose. And if you can starve the cancer cells of that metabolic fuel, remember it burns dirty. If we can use ketones, we can essentially starve that type of cell.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically you and I both touch into ketosis. Now I do some sweet potatoes and things in the evening, so I likely pull myself out of that. So this is something that this is going to depend on the person, but you can touch into ketosis. You do some carbs, don't you? Do you do sweet potatoes?
I cycle in and out. Typically at dinners, I'll do after dinner as a treat, I'll do a handful of berries and maybe some cream.
Yeah.
Or I'll do some high quality 90% dark chocolate that's, organic and, obviously gluten-free. So it depends. Like this week I did buy some sweet potatoes. So one night I'll have that. I mean, you get different diets out there, like a cyclical ketogenic diet. There's also Jason Sieb's shtick on the alt shift diet, which is, I think, a 3 days. I think it's a 5-day low carb, 3-day high carb kind of stick as well. So there's different things out there where you can cycle in and out. And those, I think, tend to be really good for most people. If you're more metabolically damaged, ketosis at that 20 to 30 induction phase can be pretty good. It depends. Some people I see, if they're in ketosis long-term, will start to develop some of those hypothyroid symptoms, losing hair, hair loss, outer third eyebrow, cold hands, cold feet, mood stuff. And then we just add in just a little bit of carbs, small amount, and they're doing better. So
that's what I had to do.
Yeah. So some people do better. So I'm not dogmatic at all. There are people out there that do great on that diet, and because they're not clinically oriented, meaning they're not working with patients like we are, they just think, well, because they did good on it, the other person out there that's having a bad response or not as good response must not be doing it wrong.
Yep.
I'm sorry, must not be doing it right. They're doing it wrong, essentially. So we always just make sure the fat macros are up, the protein macros aren't too high, and then just make sure the carbs are there. And that's a pretty good sign off the bat. And then we can always measure it. Get to a 0.5 to 1. 1 is pretty good cutoff. So we can customize it, and then we can figure out, okay, you're at ketosis. You've been there for 2-3 weeks. You're stabilized now. Okay, you're already at a healthy weight. You're feeling good. Your markers look good. Let's just taper up some of those carbohydrates a little bit, just a little bit. And this is where it's cool that you can play around with these exogenous ketones, the beta hydroxybutyrate salts like the calcium and the sodium. This is great to try. Be careful though. Don't make the mistake of adding these synthetic ketones in and eating a whole bunch of sugar. The body is programmed when insulin goes up. Typically, ketones never should be there, right? Because think about it, right? Insulin has to be low for ketones to be high. Because if high insulin's present, the body will block fatty acid synthesis. What are fatty acids? That's the tree branch going into the tree chopper. Out comes the ketones, right? So we want to keep insulin low. So if you eat a whole bunch of sugar, take some exogenous ketones, insulin's high, guess where those ketones are going, do you know?
Well, hopefully it's going to help go into the mitochondria.
Well, if insulin's high and sugar's high, you'll actually pee it out. So if you use exogenous ketones, you want to keep the insulin low still.
So if you're eating high sugar or you're eating higher carb and then you take ketones, you're saying waste of money.
Waste of money. And again, a lot of the marketing's out there because frankly, a lot of these ketone companies, they don't care if you do it right or wrong.
Right.
Because they're getting paid either way.
Exactly.
Not saying that's bad. There's education that comes into play. So if you're using exogenous ketones, which I think can be great from a performance neurological standpoint, especially if you have issues with Alzheimer's, things like that, that can be phenomenal because then if you have the right diet in place and then you add some ketones, it's like bada bing, you're there. We call it therapeutic ketone therapy.
So basically, don't waste your money. If you're going to do this thing, then get the diet straightened out always, but then get the cyclical ketogenic diet or experiment with that first before you go buy ketones. That's expensive. That's $200 and that's a way to waste it.
And you may not have to be, full out ketosis. I sit around 0.5 to 1 and that feels pretty good. I think just spit out some ketones. Get
Okay.
to a pretty good place. See if you can test it. Get down to 0.5 or 1. See how you feel. Stabilize. And then taper in some carbs. Start off with a little bit of lower sugar, lower fructose fruit. Handful of berries. It's a pretty good place. And then you can always try adding in a little bit of safe starch. Sweet potato, squash, yams, plantains. Do it at night, because your body doesn't need the extra sugar during the day, because cortisol is already there mobilizing and conducting sugar out of the glycogen, out of the muscle tissue or out of the liver. So the glucose is already going where it needs to go because of the high cortisol. Do your carbs at night where that cortisol isn't as present.
This is fun.
You having a good time here?
Yeah, this is fun.
Awesome.
Well, just because, there's so many different ways to go about this, and there's never, I think when people download these episodes, they think there's going to be like a single end-all be-all answer, and that's never going to exist, especially for this ketosis discussion here.
Plus, we're clinicians, so if it were that easy, every patient would be a home run, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to put on our clinician cap, so to speak, and we look at the diet, we customize it. So if you're an endomorph, right, larger, bigger, wider hips, bigger belly, those type of things, you put on fat easier and it's harder for you to burn, then you're going to really benefit by starting out with the ketogenic diet and then customizing, and then stack your carbs when it's time to stack in your carbs. Stack your carbs on at night.
Here's another thing I wanted to mention, though, too, that we haven't brought up yet. And you and I talked about Kalish's talk, I think, a few weeks ago together, where if someone has a bigger waist and they have this excess body fat, even if they go into a ketogenic approach, they may not lose weight because those toxins that are stored in the fat cells could still disrupt the metabolism, right?
Yeah, so the fat cells are a toxic reservoir for toxins, essentially. A lot of our toxins go into the fat cell.
So what do we do then? If you're trying to go super low carb and yet you still just maintain your heavy weight, you cannot burn fat.
Well, that's where seeing a good functional medicine practitioner would help. So we would look at organic acids. We would look at how you're detoxifying via pyroglutamate and sulfate and a lot of these organic acids that look at phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification. Phase 1 is taking fat-soluble toxins, right? It's already there. They're lipid soluble, meaning they're in the fat cell. We're liberating them and turning them into water soluble toxins, primarily via B vitamins, antioxidants. And then we facilitate the transfer of these water soluble toxins out the urine, out the stool, out the breath or skin, right?
Yep.
And we do that with sulfur amino acids, right? We're supporting methylation, N-acetylation, hydroxylation, right? Glucuronidation, glutathione, all of these pathways that are shooting it out. So phase 1 is more B vitamin and antioxidant induced. Phase 2 is more sulfur amino acid induced. And then also some people, because amino acids make carnitine, carnitine's a really important compound that shuttles fat into the mitochondria. It's literally called the carnitine shuttle. You can Google it. It's shuttling fat in the mitochondria to be burned. So some people will see low carnitine. We'll see some mitochondrial defects, and then we'll see some detox issues. So that can be something that we incorporate into someone's metabolic functional medicine program to help enhance it. So we get the diet dialed in non-dogmatically. Again, if you're overweight, default to a ketogenic diet. That's pretty safe. A ketogenic diet on a paleo template, right? Atkins made that ketogenic term famous, except he used a lot of crappy foods, didn't differentiate with soy protein, added aspartame and artificial sweeteners, didn't care about grass-fed or chemicals or pesticides or Roundup. So he kind of stumbled on it by accident because he was just looking at it from a sugar and carbohydrate standpoint. He didn't look at it from the qualitative standpoint of phytonutrients and pesticides and chemicals and inflammatory foods and excitotoxins like MSG and aspartame. So we know more. So we kind of add like a ketogenic paleo template onto it. And then we have tools like the Precision Extra by Abbott, and get it on get it on eBay and buy the strips on eBay. There's a company out of Australia, you can get them much cheaper. They're expensive. They're like $1 to $2 a strip. But if you buy them here, they're like $2 to $3. So you can get them like 50% off. I bought like 100 strips and I just test my ketones a couple times a week, just see where I'm at. And I pretty much know where I'm at based on what I eat because I've tested so many meals. I see a pattern.
Yeah.
So if I'm eating like good clean eggs or a good clean collagen shake with some good fats, MCT, and butter in the morning, I'm sitting around 0.5. And I feel pretty damn good with that.
Yep. So I know we're running out of time, but some of the benefits you can expect. I notice mental clarity goes up if I'm pushing towards ketogenic. Weight loss can happen, which I don't need to lose any weight, but I'm less hungry. I'm able to go a little bit longer between meals. I don't feel like I'm crashing like I was when I was doing more starch. There's a few benefits for me. Did you want to say anything on that part?
I think you touched upon it really well. I think a lot of people will hear this, especially if they're medically oriented. People get confused between ketoacidosis and ketosis. So I already kind of touched upon the people that ketoacidosis happens to. And typically you're looking at over 20 millimoles per liter is going to be what happens in ketoacidosis. And ketosis, you're going to, 0.5, 1, that's totally fine. Now, there's nutritional ketosis, which is what we're focusing on, right? We're doing it by nutritionally eating an adequate amount of calories because you can go in ketosis by starving and fasting, right? Because you still drive down your insulin levels because there's no calories. If there's no calories, remember, insulin's the door that opens up the cell for the calories to go in. Whether it opens up the mitochondria or the muscle or the fat cell, that's dependent upon how much insulin's coming in. But you can lower insulin by just going low calorie. So you can be in ketosis via starvation too. The difference is we're doing it nutritionally, meaning we're actually eating foods, they're real whole foods, and we're getting enough calories so your body's not going to be eating away lean tissue. Most people confuse it, and they think, oh, you're going to be ripping up your body, you're destroying your muscles. It's like, well, dude, my body's not stupid. It'd rather burn the nutrients that are in it versus taking away lean tissue. Right?
Yeah, so don't starve.
They're confusing the physiology. Yeah, they're confusing it. And that happens all the time.
Yep.
And it drives me nuts. So people need to really understand ketoacidosis and nutritional ketosis, and they need to understand ketosis versus fasting versus ketosis versus adequate calories, and also ketosis at the acidotic level because of cirrhosis or type 1 diabetes.
Yep.
Well, I think that's pretty good there. If you were to sum it up, what's the take home, Evan?
Well, take home, try it out. Make sure you're eating enough food. It's easy to undereat if you're basically cutting out not an entire food group, but essentially. So make sure you are getting enough good fats, enough good proteins, your coconut oils, your avocados, your avocado oils, your good meats, your good veggies. Your leafy greens are excellent. Stay away from the chemicals. If you start to crash, if you notice your outer 1/3 eyebrows going away, if you notice hair loss, if you feel like you're a little bit more sluggish, you feel like hands and feet are getting cold like you alluded to, get some tests run. You could get some blood panels run for thyroid. You could get your adrenals tested to see if you're just tanked out. Maybe you can't go super ketogenic. Maybe that puts an extra stress on the body and you're just not ready for that right now. So make sure your adrenals are healthy, make sure your gut's healthy, and I think you're going to be on your way to weight loss if that's a goal, which is why many people go to ketogenic approaches.
So who should do this? Cancer patients, Alzheimer's patients, anyone with metabolic syndrome, right? Waist size 35 or bigger for a woman, 40 for a man. Blood pressure, in the 140s or up. Any bit of inflammation, chronic pain, any of those symptoms, a good therapeutic 2-week trial of a ketogenic diet, paleo template is a great starting point. And again, if you enjoyed this show and you're applying the information and loving it, sharing is caring. Also give us a 5-star review. We appreciate it. And click below the screen and you can help us out.
Yep.
Evan, it's been real, brother.
You too. Take good care.
You too. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.